Um, so just moving ahead, when the principle of integration came at play, I mean, it became the basis of the policy formation for the tribal communities in India. It was perceived as the principle of charity, which the Christian missionaries had adopted, was translated into the principle of development. The debate that we're having, I mean, the why the tribal youth should be developed. I mean, why do they need to be trained to get developed? The whole question of development. So it is not a charity, but it had become a question of development at this stage. And the constitution, or the 1950, which came it became implemented and accepted in 1950, and under the article of, it's there in the information. I'm just reading out from there only. Article 342 defined the scheduled tribes and declared 212 tribes total, but the number is ever changing because lot of communities have started floating their demands for scheduled tribe to become scheduled tribe in different parts of India. So the number was initially 212, and they were located in 14 states of scheduled, tribes. The directive principles of the state policy on tribal welfare also stress that the state shall promote and with special care the education and economic interest of the downtrodden communities, including scheduled tribes. So here again, the whole question of imposition, comes in. It was promised that the education and economic interest will be protected. Developmental projects were implemented, and then it was a process of bringing them within the larger state machinery. And it was actually policy of imposition. It was not directly intervening, but there was a promise with the directive, policy, directive principles, that the states will also, the respective states of India will also bring them the tribal communities under the whole developmental model. So they will work for their better education, they will work for the development, etc., etc. The directive principles of the state policy on tribal welfare also stress that the state shall promote with special care the educational and economic interest of the downtrodden, I have mentioned. And then the Article 244, which is part 4, empowers the president with the right to declare any area as a schedule area where a substantial population of tribal in the 5th schedule. I mean, this is not 6th schedule where the entire power is completely decentralized. This is rather 5th schedule where they're given certain sort of a limited, they're partially excluded areas where schedule in the 5th schedule, under the 5th schedule in other states of India, where they had a certain right of determination, self-determination, but not the whole rights were given. I mean, it is unlike the autonomy given under the 6th schedule. So there was a difference. The administration of the northeastern states was incorporated in the 6th schedule, which is specific to the Mizoram, Assam, and present-day Mizoram, Assam, and Meghalaya. And in one in Tripura also. There's one 6th schedule area in Tripura. With the newly created administration, tribal development was taken up in different 5 years plan. I have mentioned about it also earlier. A new approach was introduced in the 5th 5-year plan for integrated development of tribes. So now we can see that they have come within the complete purview of the policy of development, which is actually, which is actually against the principle of non-imposition. They were actually brought within the larger model of development, and it was done through different, various systems, like for the policy for the social welfare of the tribal welfare, society, and gradually we'll have a different department, a different ministry for that. And but despite the measures, a universal development for all the tribes has been yet to achieve. The state has imagined that it will come under the larger, a universal model of development. So unlike that, the scheduled areas cannot have certain development plans as it is, which is designed by the state government. But then there's a hope. I mean, the central government still works towards that direction, that they will come, the scheduled tribes would also come within the total purview of this. Tribal areas cover only those specific, this is just, informatory, so maybe we can skip this, or you can read it for your own information. It is just in a line of what we are just discussing, that later the PESA was also, enacted in 96, and then the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment was, bifurcated in 1999 to form a separate Ministry of Tribal Affairs, which acts as a nodal agency for overall policy planning and coordination of programs for the development of the scheduled tribes. So this is it is constantly evolving, though it is based on the principle of integration with the Panchashil, 5 points of the Panchashil, but then it has been constantly evolving, and the policies are also changing over the period of time, based on the need of the time. So it is, and the need is, or the goal of the state, Indian state, is to bring it more inclusive, more participatory. So it's not the exclusion or the protection, the whole notion of protection, exclusion, integration. It is now seen in a very different way. So now there's a new term in policy interventions which is very much used, is the inclusiveness, that it has to be inclusive of all, the Dalits, the tribals, everyone. So everyone will participate or come under the policy purviews, right? So it's been just an idea of, it is, these slides are just to give you an idea that how it is not just that, we dwell on the policy, we dwell on the principles of Panchashil and then just try to stick on that. It is not like that. It is never like that. It has been constantly evolving, and according to that, and in the course of evolution, the different form of policy interventions, different ways of designing the policies are happening around the question of tribe. So what is sixth schedule now? Just to briefly comment, and then we move to the citizenship question. Before going to the citizenship question, we'll just quickly have how sixth schedule came into being through the discussion of the citizens constituent assembly debate. So the sixth schedule, I'm sure that all of you already know. So it came into being it was passed in 1949 in CAD debate, in Constituent Assembly. And it seeks to safeguard the rights of the tribal populations through formation of autonomous district councils, which is ADC. And I'm sure that most of you are very much aware of it. You have been experiencing it. The entire Meghalaya is under this provision. So the ADCs are the bodies representing the district to which the constitution has given the varying degrees of autonomy within the state legislature. The governors of the state, as we had already mentioned, that it happened in 1933 Government of India Act only. The governor was given the power. So it draws from there. It is actually the colonial design that is still at play. So governors, they have to write, ultimate right when it comes to the sixth schedule areas and then sixth schedule, autonomous district councils. And they can also, alter or change the names of the autonomous regions, and also they can decide whether a central policy will be implemented or not. So governor is the ultimate, authority here. So the autonomous districts and regional councils, there are two different ways how it was implemented. It was imagined as autonomous districts and also the regions. For instance, the Borough Autonomous Council is a territorial council, which is a regional council, which has a territory within a larger state called Assam. But autonomous districts are different, which is very much in functioning in Meghalaya. So along with the ADCs, the sixth schedule also provides a separate regional councils for each area constituted as an autonomous region. So this is This is in 10 areas in the northeast are registered, and then autonomous districts like 3 in Assam, Meghalaya and Mizoram, and 1 in Tripura is functioning. And these regions are named as district council of the name of the district, and the regional council the name of the region. So each autonomous district and regional council consist of not more than 30 members, of which the governor and the rest nominate 4 via elections. All of them remain in power for a term of 5 years. The Bodoland Territorial Autonomous Council, which I had just referred to, however, is an exception, and it can constitute up to 46 members out of 40 are elected. So that's an exception, which was again made at the power of the governor in the Bodo Territorial Autonomous Council. So the ADCs are empowered with civil and judicial powers. These are the, I'm going quickly because these are technical things. Many of you are aware of it. The ADCs are empowered with the civil and judicial powers and can constitute village courts within their jurisdiction to hear trials and cases involving the tribes, which we had just discussed while we're discussing about the customary laws. And the councils are also empowered to make legislative laws on matters like land, forest, fisheries, social security, entertainment, public health, etc., with due approval from the governor. This point is very important because it actually again brings us back to the whole proposal for a separate tribal policy, because as I have mentioned that it is the forest and then the whole question of land which became very central to the tribal administration. So the land question is very central, and very interestingly, when we'll be discussing about the case of Meghalaya, then we'll be mentioning that the village councils, I mean the traditional councils, the darbars, they never had the land right. But then interestingly, it was after it became a part of the 6th schedule, the right to land was given. I mean, it's the ADCs are given the right to land. I mean, they can have their own legislature around the question of land and then forest. These are very two central things for the tribal communities. Also, acts passed by the parliament and the state legislature may or may not be levied. That's, I have just mentioned that the governor had the final call. If governor doesn't feel that these laws cannot be implemented in these schedule areas, 6 schedule areas, then it is not implemented. Governor can go, but then if the president approves, then the governor has to approve. There are some technical exceptions. So it just to give a just to have a context in specifically in terms of Meghalaya, because we are in Meghalaya. So I thought that how this historical context, how we can have an historical context in the present discussion. So this is for that idea. The Meghalaya was actually part of Assam, I mean, a province of Assam, which was again not just consistent of the present day Assam. It was also had districts from present day Bangladesh. Then it was the Bengal. So it was actually the colonial policy was about they had redesigned this province of Assam in a very interesting way. So sometimes they had districts from East Bengal, like Sylhet and Mymensingh. So it also constituted the present day Northeast, the entire Northeast, and districts of Sylhet and Mymensingh at one point of time. At one point of time, it was just a Sylhet, and then the rest of the Northeastern states, present day Northeastern states, and also some part of Burma, because Burma was also under the colonial rule. So the geography of the region, including Meghalaya, present-day Meghalaya, was so much different, and it kept on changing. So with the territorial changes in the region, the whole identity question had also shifted many times. So Meghalaya was a part of that constantly shifting territory called province of Assam. And then British entered the entire region through present-day Meghalaya, and it annexed the Jaintia and then Garo Hills completely. But then the Khasi Hills was not completely under the British control. So it was outside the British. I mean, there are some villages, very few villages, which were under the direct control of the British, government. Most of the other villages were actually given the right to have the self-administration through the rule of the Siams and the traditional tribal chiefs. And but there's a tweak here. I mean, they had a certain agreements on certain points. So they, after coercing them into a very, I mean, here it is called subsidiary alliance, but then they had a certain sort of understanding with the British administration. They were not fully autonomous. And unlike other parts of India, that's the most important point. Unlike other parts of India, Siams were only territorial chiefs with no control over land. So they never had the control over land, which British used it in a very interesting way. So about the Shillong Peak, for instance, Shillong Peak was actually given by the British administration to some contractors. And then the sacred forest was actually the contractors had destroyed the sacred, forest. And there are a lot of stories around it. There are a lot of myths around it. So it is not like that the chiefs could stop it. But there are also certain accounts where it is said that the chiefs, the tribal chiefs, traditional tribal chiefs also played a part in this bargain, giving it to the contractor. So it was only after independence the Khasi states were amalgamated. I mean, this Khasi states, of course, you know that it is the areas, the villages which were under the control of the Siams, the traditional tribal chiefs, were amalgamated within the other Khasi villages under and direct control of the British thing. I mean, not British, but then within the larger imagination of the new India. So they came under the same rule. Before that, they were in two different rules. So before independence, along with Garos and then Khasis, the Jaintias, the Khasis and the Jaintias living in the partially excluded areas, controlled by the colonial rule, participated in elections, partial participations for the Assam legislative election. That's in 1937, they participated. And after independence, of course, all these hill tribes, the Garo, Khasi, and then Jaintia, they participated in the voting of Assam Legislative Assembly and then the Indian Parliament. So the Assam, undivided Assam, had hill representatives like Nichols Roy, William Sangma, and Blaring, Karim, and became ministers. They were the ministers in Assam Legislative Assembly, and also Assam Legislative Assembly had representatives from the other hill regions like Lusai Hills, which is the present-day Mizoram. So what are the I mean, it is little important. I mean, not also in the present-day context, and also for the following session on citizenship, to talk about how the birth of Meghalaya happened, because it talks about two important things. One is, of course, the community identity, the question of identity and nationality. And then the second thing is that the failure of the territorial sixth schedule. Assam had, undivided Assam, immediately after independence, had two sixth schedule areas. One was in Karbi Anglong, and not two, three. Mizoram, Karbi Anglong, and Meghalaya. I mean, present-day Meghalaya. I'm referring to it as Lusai Hill, Khasi and Jaintia Hills districts, which were under the sixth schedule, and the Karbi area. So, immediately after independence, actually in 50s and in early 60s, these autonomous regions started, revolting. In a sense, there's a very strong feeling that the autonomy which was promised was not actually given, or it failed. The sixth schedule, the promises of the sixth schedule were not fulfilled. So and also there are other factors. For instance, you can see that the factors like short-sightedness policies of the, especially it's a caste Hindu dominated, Assamese speakers who were with the Congress government. And then Congress was, of course, that was the only government for quite a long time in Assam. It was after the breaking up of the states, Assam came under the Janta rule for once, and then later on it changed. So it was just the experience of the Congress party, and then the dominance of the Assamese speaking caste Hindu leaders. Many of the hill communities, including the plain tribal communities, also felt alienated. They did not, feel that they were integrated, or they were participating in a, their representation was not much in a political, voice, in the form of political voice. So that was one of the reasons. And another is the rise of the middle class leadership in the hills, because with the coming up of the new education system, with the exposure to the education system, it was not just, after independence, of course, it became easier to go out for education, and exposure to the Western education helped them to have a very objective understanding of the participation, the modern concepts, of course, Western concepts of representation and participation. So that was another reason that they became aware of the self, the identity question. So here comes the whole identity question. And the aspiration for the autonomy was actually floated. So both the traditional elites and the rising educated middle class leadership in Khasi Jointia Hills took the lead in demanding the hill state. So it was actually the present day Meghalaya who took the leadership. And then they called for the things, and then the Garo and then Mijos also supported the demand. But the Mikir Hill, which is present day Karbi Anglong, though they were initially participating in the demand, in the protest, they gradually, they kind of, they withdrew the support, and then still now also they're part of Assam. I mean, they're a 6th scheduled territorial council in Assam only. So Mijos initially supported, but then later they have withdrew, but they were given the state status, Union Territory first, and then later the state in 60s. And the movement continued in the Garuk and Khasi Jointia Hills, and then the leaders of the Hill State movement had to face, very stiff resistance from the Congress leader, as I have said, because they never wanted separate states, because and there are also claims that, like the missionaries, there were a lot of interventions by the caste Hindu Assamese speakers and that this is a question of identity, as because it was done around the question of language. Assamese was imposed, and that was done in a very missionary manner. I mean, they would come and then they would have expeditions to places like Arunachal Pradesh, present day Arunachal Pradesh, and then Meghalaya, Mizoram, the hill districts. And then it was proposed that, Assamese should be the medium of instruction, or Assamese should be the sole official, language. Because in 1960s, there's a very big movement in undivided Assam, including Meghalaya, present-day Meghalaya, that Assamese should be the only official language, the sole official language of the state. Then it was, of course, agitated, protested by the Bengali speakers. And there is also a question of the illegal immigrants, because there is a fear that if the illegal immigrants coming from the East Bengal, East Pakistan at that point of time, if they accept Bengali as their mother tongue, then it is actually the Bengali would be the majority language in Assam, in undivided Assam. And then the hill communities were, they had different dialogues, they were speaking different languages. So it was not, they were not contributing towards this fear of the Assamese speaking caste Hindu congressmen that, they would contribute to this Bengali becoming the majority language. So that also played a very significant role. So 1960s is a very, very unique and very important period in the history of both present-day Meghalaya and then present-day Assam. So, and this hill, for the separate hill state, it was actually that point of agitation or irritation around the question of language, that Assamese cannot be the only sole, official language. So it is a question of nationality in that sense, linguistic nationality in that sense, and it started with that. So in mid 60s, the central government showed unwillingness to confer autonomous, but that was in some different way to the reasons where the hill communities were inhibiting within the larger state of Assam. But then immediately the central government had changed their mood because of certain negotiations. They could sense that the proposals from the Assamese speaking caste Hindu congressmen were not much convincing, because they were manipulating the call of the locals. So they changed the decision, and then they had given Meghalaya, Mizoram was already given Meghalaya the statehood, and immediately the capital of Assam was shifted. So that's precisely the historical context to it. But now, where I'm making a connection to the following session, in between we'll have a break with the Constituent Assembly debate. So just to establish the link here is that the whole question of ethnicity or the nationality around the question of language has become the center, the epitome of the emergence of a new phase of movement, both in present-day Meghalaya and Assam, which happened in around the question of citizenship in Assam in the form of Assam movement, and the KSU movement, which happened, which started in late 1970s, around 1978, had also the root, the seed in the whole question of this linguistic identity, right? And then that led to the question of citizenship, and how that we are going to discuss in the following session. But now we will take a brief, break, but then a discussion around the Constituent Assembly debate, right?
So this is the excerpt I was mentioning prior to the session that we started. What we were going to do is that we read through this, the first 8 pages only, where it's a conversation primarily between Nichols Roy and Rohini Chaudhary, but there are other participants also. The interesting part about this conversation is that there are to and fro arguments against providing autonomy, the question of autonomy, and why that is required, why that is pertinent to the question of the formation of any state prior to that. So this won't be an individualistic reading. We should sort of do it in a group activity. So I see like we have even number of people. We can distribute one set of document among 2 people. So I'll keep one on each table, and there are other documents also. There are other copies also. But while reading through this, it's something that, of course, ma'am can read, I can read, we all can read, and we can do the reading on our own also. But it will be better if we read it together here, taking sort of roles of the speakers here. Just But this will require a few volunteers, like who can volunteer for a certain speaker. Like first of all, we have Shri Rohini Kumar Chaudhary. If anyone can volunteer to speak for that person.
It's like mock parliament. I mean, you become someone else and then speak on the behalf of the speaker. And you have the script with you, so you can draw from there.
So the alternative can be that we read it on our own for like 10-15 minutes. It's a small reading. The first 8 pages only, from page number 1 to page number 8, and the conversation primarily between Jaipal Singh, Rohini Chaudhary, JM Nichols Roy, and other infrequent speakers. So we do this reading and we can note down the important points. We can highlight or underline, and then we can discuss among ourselves what are the most important points that were given in favor of and also in against the passage of sixth schedule. Can we do that? It's 12. Sorry, it's 3:29. So around till 3:40ish, 10 minutes would be enough. Then we can sort of take the input from all of you. The whole idea was that, from what I could gather from this document, is that prior to the passage of sixth schedule, when the parliamentarians were discussing why the hills tribes need autonomy, so there was a lot of fear mongering in the parliament itself. A lot of parliamentarians were of opinion that if you give people autonomy such as this under the ambit of Union of India, then and if you allow them to develop on their own, which was a very Nehruvian argument that we saw here, then they will develop in a very divergent path, and that will sort of separate us from them, and it is without the recognition that there is already a separation, that the people have always been kept in isolation, and they were using that to sort of thread a fearful argument that if you allow them autonomy, that there will be a divergent development outcome, and we will never be able to sort of assimilate them with ourselves. And again, all of this goes back to the discussion we were having regarding the policy of assimilation and the policy of integration, how to go around that. And some of the few things that I'll read out from here, only very important, very interesting argument presented. Now, this is of course argument against autonomy, in which Rohini Kumar Chaudhary says that you want to dissociate them from us by creating these autonomous districts, and if that remains autonomous, then the assimilation of the tribal and non-tribal people will never happen. So he was accusing the people who was in favor of this, that they want to keep things separate. And the fear mongering, when I say fear mongering, what I mean is that he was saying that if you keep them separate, then they will combine with Tibet, or they will combine with Burma. They will never be a part of the Union of India, right? And this was one of the arguments, to which it was contested and it was countered that he has never been there. He should go there to the hilly parts of then Assam. He should spend some time with people, because all these arguments are actually baseless. The arguments about people isolating themselves and then within due to autonomy, then finally joining with Burma or what was the other? Burma or Tibet.
Tibet, yeah.
So this was said by Sri Lakshmi Narayan Sahu, and then Jaipal Singh comes in and he says that he has been shocked by the amount of venom that members are pouring against the people of against the tribal people of Assam, and he then discusses that the ambassador in Moscow, when he left, he gave us two solutions. One he called the power solution, and the other he called as the knowledge solution. Now, whatever Rohini Kumar Chaudhary was advocating for, he described it as a power solution, in which you force people into something. you force a policy of assimilation, right? And he says that if you go with this kind of policy, you will essentially create what you are saying right now. If you force people into something, it will come with resistance, and now that might encourage people to never come under the ambit of Union of India. So there is only one way, which is the knowledge solution that we can go with. It will not do good any. It will not do any good if we are going with the power solution, right? And we have to inspire confidence in the heart of the fellow citizen, in the heart of the tribal people in the hills, and that can be only done with genuine sincerity. It cannot be done in any manner which looks forceful or is forceful, right? And he also questioned the kind of intergroup hostilities that a lot of people brought into the conversation. And now that was very stereotypical and prejudiced against on the part of the parliamentarians who were saying that they were discussing how the practice of human sacrifice is still, prevalent in the hill tribes. And he was saying it by to say that basically that if you provide them autonomy, then such practices will go on. And this was countered by people like Jaipal Singh, who said that you actually should spend some time there to stop, fear mongering in this sense. All these prejudices and all these things used to happen hundred of years ago. A lot of arguments are colonial only. They do or do not happen now. And even if there are, anomalous cases like one or two cases of human sacrifice in the present day, then there are such cases in the other parts of India also. We still have murders, we still have other types of hostilities and violations of human rights. That does not mean anything. I mean, that is a problem, not in this way. That should not be the basis of denying autonomy to these tribal people in the hill areas. So, yeah. He also called for the formation of a subcommittee of the parliamentarians so that they go themselves and they see and compare the things, check their own, confront their own prejudices. Then we have the incoming of J.J. Nichols, right, who laments upon the kind of lack of knowledge people showed in the conversation prior to this. And he says the first principle for bringing about a feeling of reconciliation between, this is on page number 5, the first principle for bringing about a feeling of reconciliation between people who are estranged from one another is that one must place himself in the place of another. So reconciliation can only happen when you place yourself in the shoes of the other people. Otherwise, it's a futile effort. It's in the last paragraph if you want to sort of highlight or underline. And and he says that people lack the understanding of the culture of the hill people here, and then he advocates for the culture of the hill tribes, and he says that it differs from the culture of the plainsmen. But what is their culture? This is on page 6. Does it mean dress or eating and drinking? If it means eating and drinking or ways of living, the hill tribes can claim that they have a better system than some of the people in the plains. And for the people of plains, their system should be a standard and not the other way around. Because among the tribesmen, there is no difference between class and class. The Rajas, the tribe chieftains, they work along with the laborers in the fields, but the plains people will not pick up any job which requires manual labor. They would rather bring people from other parts of India, Bihar and Bengal, to do their digging and plowing work. They will not do themselves. He essentially calls the plains people as lazy people because they will not do the laborious task. Whereas in the hill tribes, everybody is doing the laborious task and there is no difference between who's doing it. There is no particular labor class and that class only will do it. Everybody is doing it. And there is also a greater sense of equality among people because women are also engaged in all the laborious tasks. It's not like women are necessarily domesticated as it is found in the plains tribe. Sorry, plains people. And yeah, and then he also goes on to say that the social organization in the village, the clan and the tribe, and the outlook and structure are generally strongly democratic. There is no system of caste or parda or child marriage. So these three are very strong points that he says in advocacy of the hill tribes, because these three things are still prevalent in the plains. Now, this is one classification I mean, this is one thing that we can say. Like today, we have started to call central, north, and south India as the mainland India. But this time, when J.J. Nichols Roy is advocating, he is referring to them as plains people. He's not, and he's differentiating them from the hill tribe people. So, hill people and plains people. And then he says that advancement cannot come by force. This is on page number 7. Advancement comes by a process of assimilation of a higher culture, higher mode of thinking, and not by force. Advancement will be accepted by the people when you allow them to see something better than what they have. So this is not necessarily advertising your own culture as being superior. It is more along the lines that you are anyway exposing your culture to the people of other culture, and if they see that you have something better to offer than they have, then they themselves will look up to it as a standard and they will assimilate. That is the only way advancement can come. And I think we can reorient our previous conversation along this. What can assimilation mean? We were having a discussion on what can be meaning of assimilation beyond criticism.
And also development, the advancement question.
Yeah,
I mean, it's having something better, which we have now. It's not about having what the West has or what some reason have or some people have.
So he says that village councils in the autonomous districts and the district council will enable the hills people to rule themselves in their own way and to develop themselves according to their own methods. So why should you deprive the people of the thing which they consider to be good and which does not hurt anybody on earth? I'm sure he was saying that equality and equality between people, classlessness, these things and democracy, these things do not hurt other people. So why should you deprive them of that and impose your methods on them and your standards on them, which is highly classist and also casteist? So the Gandhian principle is to encourage village panchayats in the whole area. Then why then should any one object to the establishment of the district council demanded by the hills people? If Gandhian principle is about autonomy to the villages, then
or decentralization,
then why cannot that same autonomy be given to the hills people? Right. I would like very much if Parliament will appoint a committee to see these tribal areas. Perhaps they will see that in some places they are so far advanced that the whole of India must follow their examples. In those areas, there is no difference between man and woman. The woman does work, goes to the bazaar and does all kind of trade, and she's free. In the plains, the woman is just beginning to get free and is not free yet. In some hills districts, the woman is the head of the family. She has the purse in her hand. I mean, the authoritative figure. There is a contribution in the decision-making process, and she goes to the fields along with men. There is no clearly defined gender role in which women is domesticated and the man is going out. So in this way, he compares, J.J. Nichols Roy compares the plains people and the hills people, and gives a very strong argument. Then why should they deserve autonomy? Women and men are not ashamed of any kind of labor. In the plains of Assam, there are some people who feel ashamed to dig earth, but the hillman is not so. Will you want that kind of culture to be imposed upon the hillman and ruin the feeling of equality and dignity of labor which is existing among them? And labor is an honor to these people. No one of them consider that it is beneath their dignity to work. And this was a response. I mean, of course, when he says this, it was met with strong opposition from the people who are not belonging to the hills, and they said, "Why are you making propaganda? Why are you vilifying our people?"
Yeah.
And so he says that I'm not verifying anyone, I'm only presenting facts. And everything I have said is that cannot be. I mean, he was asked to withdraw the remarks, and the president struck it down that he has not said anything. Nicholas Roy has not said anything that should be withdrawn. It is all facts, and
Ambedkar comes in.
before Ambedkar, he calls for Ambedkar actually.
Yeah,
I support the amendment moved by Dr. Ambedkar. At the same time, I must say before I sit down that these Hills people feel that even the sixth schedule has controlled them too much and that they have not got enough what they would like to have. So he was trying to make that this is still not enough. This is the autonomy is just one aspect of it, and this is still less than what they want and they deserve. And then Dr. Ambedkar comes in and he says that we have debated this question for 2 hours, and I think the debate was mostly on points that are really known. So after this, they move into the very technical aspects of parliamentary routine, in which they move the amendment, and there is a discussion between the different parliamentarians. But essentially, it was this that there was a sort of propaganda, a sort of fear mongering done from certain cohort of parliamentarians on why the Hills people should not be given autonomy, because
and also the other way, I mean, few debated opposing the proposal that why they should be given autonomy. And then the Nichols Roy, the people, and very interesting here, that the same person, the Nichols Roy, who actually spoke for the autonomy of the hill people, and then he called actually hill people and then plain people. When the question of citizenship raised in the same Constituent Assembly debate, then Nichols Roy actually brought in the question of the plains people. He said that now what will happen to the plain tribes? Now the hill tribes have got the protection. Now what will happen to the plain tribes? So it is not also very dichotomy, and in a sense it is not just a question of the hills and tribes. So the same person has also defended the interest of the plain tribes. So that's quite, I mean, the nature of democratic, I mean, this is a historic speech. We all should actually read this speech by Nichols Roy. I mean, this is unparalleled. I mean, he's so modern and so rational in that sense. I mean, even if we talk of the modern democratic sense, I mean, he had this very, very strong sense of, democracy before even India came under the practice of democracy. I mean, we're yet to accept the constitution. It was in making. But the kind of references, the comments he made, I mean, this is highly, highly democratic. I mean, very philosophical in that sense, and very strong comments. And the questions around the culture, so I'll just quickly bring in, you want to add something so that I'll move to the question of citizenship? Okay. So thanks for that. I'll just continue with what Ashwini read to you and then kind of very meaningfully highlighted and then summarized, is that it brings us to the question of, again, the nationality. I had a different session plan for this while discussing the community identity and then the question of citizenship and nationality here. But now I'm going to avoid this because we do not have much time. So the philosophical part I'm going to avoid. So I'll just come quickly to start with the Nichols Roy's intervention, and then start with the question of how it was imagined in undivided Assam, the whole question of community identity. We'll come back here, but then quickly I'll go to the CAD again, and then, yes. This is Nichols Roy. When the whole question of, I mean, before that, we'll read this. This is Omyo Kumar Das talking. I mean, there's just an image of the Constituent Assembly debate, how it looked. And this is the person who floated the whole question of citizenship, that the state, the provinces, they should give some right to decide on the citizenship questions, because it was kept in the central list. It was not in the provincial list. And then the Omyo Kumar Das, he raised this question. This is very much in a connection with what Nichols Roy talked about. he proposed that the migration and naturalization, these two subjects also should be put in the concurrent list, or the language so altered. I mean, it's the proposal was, he also proposed for an alteration of the language to permit the province to have scope of action in these two subjects, citizenship and naturalization, how citizenship is obtained. And we know how the mass migration in Assam, that is undivided Assam, I mean Meghalaya is also part of it, has altered the very complexion of the population. It has disturbed the relative distribution in population. That's one of his comment. And it was actually denied by the mover of the motion, where the citizenship, the question of citizenship and naturalization was kept in the union list. And this is how Gopalasamy Iyengar kind of, debated that the federation is responsible for maintaining the integrity of India and preserving its interest, security, providing for its defense, and so on. So it is a big authority, and we cannot, vest it on the provinces. Otherwise, there will be discriminations on the basis of, nationality, because India was moving towards one nationality. Before that, I think I have missed on one quotation where actually Ameya Kumar Das had said very, very categorically that the culture of Assam, I mean undivided Assam, is very unique from other parts of the India. So he said in the same Constituent Assembly debate, said that it has the culture of Assam has a mix of the Mongoloid culture of different Tibeto-Burmese languages it has drawn from. So all the communities, they kind of they speak different languages, not just originating in Sanskrit, but also from the origin of Tibeto-Burmese. So it is a very unique culture, which is can't be seen in other parts of India. So we need a protection for the culture, just like Nichols Roy had proposed for the autonomy. So this was actually also told by the Ameya Kumar Das, and then, but his proposition was different. I mean, his proposal was different. He was saying that we should be given the right to define the citizenship of the province. So basically, he proposed for two-tier citizenship, dual citizenship, that centrally we have a law, a central policy, but in provincial level also we should have some say. That we say that this is the people of Meghalaya. So Meghalaya should have a right on it. That Meghalaya have legislative and laws, legislatures to define its people. That was the proposal by Ameya Kumar Das, and his logic was drawn from the whole, the fact that the Assam, undivided Assam of that point of time, had a very unique culture, which had different, diverse communities, not just Dravidian, not just Aryan, but also Tibeto-Burmese, group. And then Nichols Roy had said that, the point which I have just mentioned, he insisted on making the constitutional provisions for the protection of land owned by the tribes in to protect their cultural identity. He stressed on, when this whole question of citizenship came in, Nichols Roy had stressed on the point of land. Land ownership should be completely at the hand of the tribes. So then he pushed the matter and then said that whether we have, even if we have one citizenship, one nationality, which the entire assembly was pushing onto, even if the provinces were not given any, functioning power on executive power, but we need to have some sort of protection for the tribals to have a control over the land right. So the tribal question, I'm just reading from it, tribal question and the protection, came into place. But then he said that the hill people are now, in a sense, in a way protected with the 6th schedule. Then what will happen to the plains people? So he had put it there in the argument. As he says that Jawaharlal Nehru's efforts he acknowledged and then argued that this provision, the 6th schedule, has left other tribal people living in the valleys, without, outside the sixth schedule, right? So that was the concern. And that's a very, very, very important point, because Assam was having a lot of, problems regarding, there's a colonial policy which was also called line system. Line system was actually for the protection of the tribal, land rights, which demarcated the migrant settlement. So immigrants, specifically, it of course, it just said immigrants, but then migrants who were migrating at that point of time from East Bengal, they were not actually allowed to cross that line. So this is a administrative policy that the colonial government had. It's a line system, which is called line system, for the protection of the land, tribal land right. I'm going to skip this part as well, because we do not have much time. But then just to, brief, this is about the census of 1961, because it also addresses the question of religion and language, bringing in the whole question of ethnicity and identity and nationality question. So, but that these proposals to have some provincial control over the question of, citizenship matter, it was denied, of course. And then Ambedkar proposed and pushed for a one nationality, one citizenship concept. And then there were some proposals for, dual citizenship on the basis of the Panchayati Raj, the village structure. That was also completely denied by Ambedkar. And then Ambedkar pushed it one nationality, one citizenship concept, and it was accepted in the Constituent Assembly. And finally, it became a law. 1955 Citizenship Act we had passed, and then it came into function from 1956, immediately after that. But Assam, undivided Assam, where Mizoram was also there, where Meghalaya was also there, we're still struggling with this question of protection of the culture. So, and migration was illegal immigration from East Pakistan at that point of time, 60s, very happening, very, very animated period. We had two wars, India had two wars, one with China, one with Pakistan. And the whole, this partition politics was, it was very unsettling period. It was yet to settle down. Though the western, frontier was completely demarcated, the boundary was demarcated in western province, not in the eastern side. The boundaries are very porous. People were still migrating in and migrating out. There were policies like, passport schemes and others, but it was very new, and it was not really functioning especially in the eastern border. So 1960s census again highlights the question of Muslim migration into Assam, undivided Assam, where Meghalaya was also a part of it. And by then, there's this 1960s language movement happened when Assam pushed Assamese as the sole language, official language of Assam. The acceptance of it has, of course, made problem, and then it was responded very strongly by the hill tribes, hill districts, and also by the Bengali speakers. And there was a 1951 census had also NRC. NRC was a very innovative step which undivided Assam had, unlike any other regions of India. NRC was just done or prepared for Assam, undivided Assam, including the hill districts. In 51, there was an indication that if the migrants who were migrating from East Bengal accept the language Bengali as their mother tongue, then in Assam, the Assamese will lose the majority status. That was a fear which was functioning at the, at the behind of the larger political dynamics, and which was very fearful. For the Assamese speaking, caste Hindu congressmen. So they kind of act upon it. But what census of 1961 did is something unparalleled, and this is a very, very highly political census which happened in Assam. 1961 marked that, of course, it was actually the language movement was happening, and 61 census was also conducted within that period of time. So there's also question of authenticity of the data, but whatever, it was done. And then they said that the origin, when they were asking the question that what is your birthplace to the Muslim, migrants, the census report said that the responses were actually untrue in the case of Muslim Bengali speakers. They said that they were born in some parts of Assam, some Gwalpara, some peripheral, bordering areas. So they did not reply to the question. They did not give the right answer to the question. They lied when they were asked about the origin of the place of birth. And then they were convinced that they were lying. And to do that, they asked a question, another question, where also they identified them as liars, that when they were asked that what language you speak, the Muslim migrants, then they would also again lie by saying that our mother tongue is Assamese. And why so? Because they wanted the land right. And just to survive in the larger political system, if acceptance of mother tongue, Assamese as their mother tongue, will help them to survive, they were okay to accept it. But now there are two problems for the census report, 61 census, superintendent, who wrote the report, and then in fact Nehru had called him to have a discussion or give some clarification on it, because it was very, very anti-Muslim in that sense. So he said that the migration data is incorrect in the case of Assam. There are a lot of migration happening, but they're not giving the right answer for the place of birth. And if we draw from the language statistics, that is also incorrect, because they're not saying this. They're saying that Assamese is their mother tongue to survive the politics. So what did they ask is that they asked that what language what religion you follow. And it was said, it was written in the census report that, and it was also presumed that the Muslims specifically, they do not lie about their language. So they relied on the language, religion data to draw the migration data, which was never done in the history of census in India. And that's the only time it was done. And then they also relied on the census of the Pakistan to get the migration data right. And then this superintendent was kind of called by the Nehru, but then by then it was very late. After the publication of the census report, it is lately published, but yet it was leaked to the press. And then the whole hue and cry, the public cry was there. And in Assam, the public of Assam, they responded to this in a very different manner. So the whole question of migration was Muslim migration, quote unquote, very highlighted, and it created a lot of trouble. And in parts there were hesitations, in parts there were a lot of anti-Muslim sentiments was created. So 1960s was very, very difficult for the entire region, the northeastern region. And what became very, very, there are other contexts also. I mean, how the NRC also came into play. I mean, came to the whole direct understanding of, there were some cases where some policies were implemented. For instance, the prevention of infiltration from Pakistan policy was implemented. Foreigners tribunals also came into play. So there are a lot of interpretations about the citizenship laws in Assam, that whether NRC will be a document for to prove your citizenship, etc., etc. But I can't go into detail. I mean, it will take a long time. So I'm just coming back. This is actually the cases from that particular case which I wanted to refer, but now I'm not referring. We don't have time. So, and what altered that 60s agitative mood, that vibe was, translated, became a mass movement in Assam around the question of migration, is in 1971 when the Bangladesh was created. So we had another war. India had another war in 71, and then Bangladesh was created, and Assam, including present-day Meghalaya, and that is a very crucial phase for Assam, because Biden, Meghalaya was separating. Already Mizoram became a separate state, union territory first and then state later. And then in 72, Meghalaya got the state, a full-fledged state, recognition. And 71, the war happens, the amount of refugee came into Meghalaya, Tripura and Assam was actually the highest in the number, in the history of migration. Assam, this particular reason, did not receive this much of refugee during the partition also. And following that, the question of migration, following that, the popular protest happened in 1980s in Assam, which is called Assam agitation. Then what is the importance? Why I'm discussing this case of Assam, as I have mentioned very briefly earlier, is that this is the only case in India which led to a significant alteration of citizenship laws in India. There is the first amendment, 1985 amendment happened following the Accord of Assam Accord. That there it was promised that Assam will be given the special status to protect its culture and identity and heritage and tradition. And then it was solved around the question of citizenship. That a person who comes in after 24th March of 1971 will be the illegal immigrant who comes into Assam. But the same person, if, as I have already mentioned, who comes into West Bengal or Rajasthan, that person is not an illegal migrant. So that is a unique case that Assam had, made in the history of Indian, citizenship laws, and that happened through the popular protest. And this popular protest happened started in 1979 and continued for 6 long years. In 85, the accord was signed, and following in 85, this accord was signed in 85, and this first amendment, the Citizenship Amendment Act 85, was introduced and it was implemented, where the special case, unique case of Assam was made. There's a first and historic, happening that happened around the question of nationality, to protect the Assamese nationality. So it has entangled two questions: the question of citizenship, where actually originally it was just recognition of one culture, one nationality, which is Indian nationality. But now there's a special case of Assam where the Assamese nationality question has got a very ethnocentric space within the larger legal framework of Indian constitution, right? So, and interestingly, following this movement in 1978, as I have mentioned earlier, KSU movement also started around the same question of identity, the nationality question of especially the Khasi nationality question. So it was, and also it has led to the movements like 2001, the movement against outsiders. So it has that continuation, how the Khasi Students Union, and interestingly, Khasi Students Union has drawn a lot from the Assam Students, All Assam Students Union. The structure is very much same, and in many of the issues, they have worked together, and especially around the rights to resources, the right to, the tradition and culture, protection of traditions of culture. Whenever there was a protest, the KSU and then All Assam Students Union had participated in the same platform, and then had drawn inspiration from how the organization called All Assam Students Organization union functions. So it's a similar kind of a, union, and they have also raised voices against the migration, illegal migration, and the whole problematic question of outsider. So, briefly to just summarize, I think we'll leave it here, because it also leads to the other question of, justice, which we'll be elaborating more on tomorrow. We will be leaving it today. But then just to make a, connection here again, this whole community identity, the question of community identity, how Assam plays a historic role in connecting with the larger question of citizenship, and it also leads us to the question of justice. I mean, if we call that Assam movement was a successful popular protest, which has kind of, successfully raised the voice of the Assamese nationality and then had entangled the question of nationality with the legal question of citizenship. But then another question comes here about the question of justice. I'll just give one example and then I'll leave it here, end it here for today. My larger area of research is this, I mean, citizenship and nationality, specifically in Assam, in the context of Assam. So while I was conducting the research and then I was doing the archival work in Delhi, I had a lot of conversation with other scholars from other parts of India. For instance, UP, Delhi, Maharashtra, Bihar. So whenever my friends will have a discussion and then I'll be sharing what I'm finding in archive, and then so they would ask, this one question struck me. I mean, that's the question I want to float here. That one, a friend of mine from West Bengal, he just floated just a simple question. He said that why of all the states in India, yes, of course, we are making a very unique case for Assam, as we have just discussed. But then he said that of all the states in India, why only Assam needs a special protection? Why? Is it not an injustice to the other states? I mean, anybody who have illegally migrating to India and settle in any part of India is an illegal migrant. But then why the special status is given to Assam? This is highly injustice. This is not a justice. I mean, what will the other states will do? So we should also protect. Why you need the protection? That is the same question which Rohini Kumar Chaudhary asked, floated in Constituent Assembly debate. If you read it, then you'll know that he was saying that even if I'm from Assam, I mean undivided Assam, and I live in a place like Shillong, I cannot buy land here. So that is injustice for me. He was highlighting it. I mean, he was reading it like that. That is injustice. So why should not I be given this right to have land in a place, in my own land? I mean, it is my homeland, called Assam. But it is not, because it's a tribal area, I do not have the right. So it's the same kind of question which my friend floated, that why of all the states only Assam is having that privilege to not have an illegal migrant. And the same question also asked during the Citizenship Amendment Bill, or the Citizenship Amendment Act, which came into play, and during the protest. The other parts of India was asking the same, so why Assam is getting NSC. But it has a historical context, of course, but for Assam it is needed, and we have already talked about why we need the protection. We have unique culture, so it has to be protected. But for the other parts of the country, it is highly injustice to have a separate law or separate, jurisdiction for a specific reason or for a specific state. So this leads us to the whole question of justice, which will be reflecting more in a Rawlsian structure, but then we'll start with tomorrow, I think. Right?
So tomorrow's session is on social marginalization, in which we will talk about how identity dimensions lead to marginalization in different aspects. And this is very important link with policy making, because whenever the state makes a policy, it is only the citizens get entitled to the policies. Anybody who cannot prove themselves as a citizen does not get entitled to the policy.
Yeah.
Automatic entitlement does not come, right? So the question then becomes about the right to city, the right to community representation, and should citizenship be embedded with policy making? What should it mean to be a citizen? Because once we discuss all the domains of citizenship through the theory of justice and all, we'll be able to sort of situate how the policy making currently is, and where it should be, the aspiration and the contemporary status that is due for tomorrow. So
Yeah.
we can break for a tea, and I mean, of course, it's not.
I mean, we can break for the day. Yeah, tea is there downstairs, so you can have it. So the assessment is not, it will be done tomorrow together.